reason, the victim, the ex-girlfriend, stopped cooperating. As a result, in most domestic violence crimes, if you don't have a cooperating victim, you don't have a conviction. So, the charges against Greg Hardy were dropped. And unfortunately, that means Greg Hardy went free to continue his NFL career. Except he wasn't free to continue his NFL career. The NFL stepped in, levied a heavy suspension, and Greg Hardy did what Greg Hardy does. He went out there and got a drug suspension following that. As a result, this very talented athlete ended his career. He did it on his own. He beat women, did drugs, and was out of the league. Now, this is where the reclamation of Greg Hardy starts. And I do want to be very clear on this point, too. Greg Hardy, by all accounts, is a great student of the MMA game. He joined MMA at the age of 28 or 29. He was an amazing athlete. The UFC doesn't usually get athletes like this in their prime. Brock Lesnar may have been the last one. If you don't know Brock Lesnar's story, he was an amazing professional wrestler, amazing athlete, decorated college wrestler who took the UFC by storm. Well, Greg Hardy can threaten to do that as well. He is an amazing athlete. He deserves credit for that athleticism. He deserves credit for dedicating himself to a new sport. So Greg Hardy, he becomes a mixed martial artist. He fights a few amateur fights. Obviously, he beats them up because these guys are, just regular bar fighters looking to make a buck here and there. And he gets featured on Dana White's show, The Contender Series. This is a show that takes up-and-coming MMA fighters, puts them in a ring, and if you can impress Dana White, you will get a UFC contract. Well, impress Dana White he did. And look, again, back to the athleticism of this guy. Impress me he did. He went out there and beat a couple of MMA fighters. Again, they aren't world champions, but they're MMA fighters. He smoked them. Within a minute, each of them knocked them out. Gets 3 professional fights, again, within a minute, knockout. And the guy's physical tools are undeniable. So he gets his UFC debut against a guy named Alan Crowder. Alan Crowder is a 13-fight professional. He's fought 13 professional fights. I think it's his second UFC fight. He's not a tomato can. He is a good fighter. He's also not a world champion. He's also not a wrestler, which I think is going to really expose Greg Hardy. But in the heavyweight division, not a lot of great wrestlers, a lot of striking. Let's see what happens. So Alan Crowder and Greg Hardy go out there. And for the casual fan, I think you're watching Greg Hardy thinking, this guy's going to smoke Alan Crowder in under a minute. Well, he didn't. He came out, threw a lot of heavy punches. Alan Crowder, like a veteran fighter, took him, countered, stayed in the fight. And all of a sudden, we got into the middle of the first round, where Alan Crowder beat the heck out of Greg Hardy. I mean, he didn't kill him. He didn't knock him out. But it was clear it was going to be a fight. Alan Crowder, in my mind, wins the first round. We go to the second round. Now, in the second round, both fighters were very tired. Look, these guys fight around 265 pounds. It's a lot of weight to carry and throw punches for more than 5 minutes. Get out there in your parking lot. I don't care how much you weigh. Get out there in your driveway. Throw your fists for about a minute and a half. You're going to start to get winded. So back out there they go. Another pretty even round. Greg Hardy starts to slow down again, and Alan Crowder starts talking trash, and all of a sudden, we're in a scramble, meaning they're wrestling around with each other. They hit the ground, and here's where Greg Hardy shows his true colors. There is an established rule in MMA fighting. You cannot kick or knee somebody in the head when they are grounded, meaning they have one or both knees on the ground. Coming out of this exchange, coming out of the wrestling on the ground, Greg Hardy got up first. Alan Crowder was on one knee, and there's a heartbeat of time. I don't want to say it was a lot of time, but it was more than a millisecond where Greg Hardy could have decided to push Alan Crowder to the ground or circled behind him. Instead, he raised his knee and fired it through the temple of Alan Crowder, rendering him nearly unconscious. Now, you could argue how hurt was Alan Crowder. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There was a veteran UFC referee who I've never seen, Dan Mingolada, never seen him so mad. Grabs Greg Hardy, throws him to the mat, and says, look, if Alan can't continue, I'm disqualifying you. Alan couldn't continue, and the fight ended. After the fight, both Greg Hardy and Dana White, the president of the UFC, both said, listen, this guy's a rookie. He's going to get better. It was just a mistake. I don't think it was absolutely intentional in the sense that he was trying to hurt Alan Crowder. But I do think he knew the rule. I do think he was hoping to get lucky, either get away with it or get lucky on the timing. Either way, it was a bad look for Greg Hardy. I wish him the best in his MMA career. let's be clear. He's paid his dues in terms of what the criminal justice system requires. He's training very hard. And by all accounts, by people in the UFC and MMA, he's doing it the right way. I just think his overall personality is one that, frankly, just doesn't really care about other people. I think he likes to hurt other people in ways that is not socially acceptable. And this was an example of that, in my opinion. So quickly, let's talk about the main event. The main event was TJ Dillashaw, the UFC champ at 135, coming down to fight Henry Cejudo, the UFC champ at 125. Most people thought that if Dillashaw beat Cejudo, that the 125 division would be folded because, quite frankly, it just doesn't get eyeballs like other divisions do. So, Dillashaw was heavily favored 2-1 in this fight. And again, from a UFC fan perspective, I think we were all hoping that Henry would pull this out, but at the same time knowing that TJ, who usually fights at 135 and is a much bigger man, was going to get the best of Henry Cejudo. He didn't. The fight started, and very quickly, Henry proved he was there for the fight. He caught TJ quickly with a kick to the head, jumped on him, fired off punches, and in the UFC, the standard is intelligently defend. The referee thought that TJ could not intelligently defend himself and stopped the fight 30 seconds in. Now look, anytime a fight is stopped 30 seconds in, the question is going to be, is it too soon? Unless the guy is knocked out with Tweety Bird floating around on his head, people are going to say it was just too soon. TJ Dillashaw immediately jumped to his feet, argued with the referee, argued with Dana White, and really was upset that he lost the fight in 30 seconds. And I get it. It could have been a quick stoppage. Dana White covered for TJ Dillashaw and said it was a quick stoppage. But from a fan's perspective, it didn't look like a quick stoppage. I know that TJ said he was fighting for a single leg. He was taking heavy, heavy punches. His body did go limp right before the stoppage. I think the referee did him a favor. And I understand TJ's frustration. TJ Dillashaw said himself he spent 12 weeks checking every calorie, every nutrient, every ingredient of his food to get down to 125 without losing all the strength that he has at the 135 level. That is 12 weeks. That is a long time, almost a quarter of a year. And it was over in 35 seconds. So now, what's next? I don't know. I think from a casual fan, what you got to see is 2 champions fight, 1 champion win, and I think that's entertaining. From a fan's perspective, you get to see the 125 division maintain some viability. We'll probably see Cejudo versus Benavidez next. Maybe we'll see a rematch with Dillashaw at 135. I don't know. The point being, I thought the card was perfect from the UFC's perspective. It really garnered itself to the UFC fan with some great fights and some good outcomes. But I think it also appealed to the casual fan who got to see some really interesting aspects of mixed martial arts. And I think it was a great kickoff to the relationship between ESPN and the UFC. Those are my opening thoughts of the day. We're going to be back with Steven Johnson in that interview and a few thoughts on the NFL playoffs. Thank you. This is Cinder Block Sports. I'm your host, Cinder Block Sports. I'm your host, Jon O'Donnell. We are going to be joined by Steven Johnson. Steven recently wrote a book. It's Walk on Our Cleats. It's a story of 25 NFL players and the challenges they overcame through not only their own perseverance, but through their faith. We're also going to talk to Steven about a whole lot of other things he has going on. So without wasting any more time, I want to welcome Steven Johnson to the show. Steven, welcome to Cinder Block Sports, and how are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing real good. How are you?
Steven, I am doing great, and again, thank you for joining us here on Cinder Block Sports. Steven, I want to start with your story of actually being a football player, because it is amazing. You went from somebody who couldn't even make the varsity high school team to a 6-year NFL veteran. Can you please share that story with us and how that came about?
Okay, yeah, definitely. So, growing up, kind of always wanted to go to the NFL. I started playing football when I was 5 years old. And, my dad was really close into my life as well as my grandfather. And my dad pushed me to be a good football player at a very young age. And he was kind of militant with it, but at the time I didn't really understand why it was so kind of mean, I guess. But now that I've grown older, I do understand, why he was so hard on me. But I was always really good at football when I was younger, and my parents ended up splitting up. And when they did split up, it kind of took a toll on me. They got divorced, and, I was moving from back and forth, different houses at different towns with my mom. Went to high school, didn't really, start varsity until my senior year. And that kind of took a toll on me because all my friends, close friends, per se, were all on varsity, and I was on the freshman and JV team. But I gave my life back to Christ my junior year, going into my senior year that summer. And literally my whole football career and life just did a full, 180, just turned around and started heading for the right direction.
That's awesome.
And I was able to lead the state of Pennsylvania in tackles and was all state. And I had never touched a varsity football field, until that first game my senior year. And I just took off, and then from there, and I wasn't highly recruited. So therefore I ended up going to a prep school because I wanted to go to a Division I school, but a lot of my coaches were telling me I was only good enough to play D2 or D3. But my dream was to play at the highest level. So I ended up going to a prep school and was doing really well there, had some interest, and ended up blowing out my knee, got hurt. Then, still stayed at it, through blood, sweat, and tears, crying and a little bit of depression. Just asked God for, another chance, another opportunity. And then he gave me that at the University of Kansas. As far as being a walk-on, almost had to go home, per se.
Yeah.
Ran out of money, but then God made another way again, and I was able to become a 2-year starter there my junior and senior year, and I was able to be one of the top tacklers in the nation. And then to the NFL now. And went to the NFL for 6 years, and now I'm in the AAF trying to get back to the NFL. And honestly, where I'm at right now in my life, I honestly feel like my career is starting over as far as being in college and going back to the NFL. I've done 6 years in the NFL so far, and my goal is to do another 6. And right now, I just hit the intermission.
Well, I think you took the words out of my mouth there, because I think 6 years is an amazing career, but I can guarantee you'll probably get another 6, man. That is an amazing story. Congratulations. Yeah. And is that kind of where faith motivated comes from? Because in your book and in your foundation, faith motivated is that term that just keeps coming up. Was that the beginning of that? I mean, because you went through so many ups and downs, man. I don't know how you would have done it without a strong faith.
Yeah, definitely. So the where faith motivated comes from is I was actually one time I was got done getting 8 teeth pulled, and I was talking to my publicist, and I was telling her that I wanted to create my own foundation. I wanted to be somebody in this world. I wanted people to know who I was. And she was like, okay, we can create your own foundation. What can it be called? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. And then for some reason, a tattoo had dawned on me that one of my friends has on his arm, one of my close friends growing up, and it says pain is my motivation. And then she goes, well, pain isn't really your motivation. If I know you, pain shuts you down. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't really like pain. And I was like, well, what keeps me going? She was like, your faith keeps you going. I was like, wait, really? She's like, yeah, like, you look at where you came from. I mean, your story, like, you always had faith, and you always knew that you were going to make it. And no matter how, hard it was going to, be, you were going to do it to make it. So you always had faith in yourself. And I was like, wow, okay. So that's where faith motivated came from. And that's where it definitely comes from. It ties right into my life. And that's whenever I go talk to kids or whoever I talk to anywhere, I always tell them to be faith motivated, because my life growing up, I always knew I was going to go to the NFL. I always wanted to go to the NFL. And for some reason, I just never wavered on myself. I knew from the second I touched a football field when I was 5 years old that I could play in the NFL just because of how good I was as a 5-year-old. And I just never gave up. And the devil has its tricks and its ways to, knock you off course. But if you continue to have faith and trust in God for all your dreams and everything, I mean, it can happen for you. And I'm definitely a living testimony of that. Well,
you are, and it is an amazing story. One of the things I want to know is you've played at every level, man, and I think you've played in the Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos, and maybe you'll get to an AAF championship with Arizona. Can you just give me a quick story, high school, college, pro, backyard with your brother, whatever, the most fun you've had playing football, and how important are those moments? You know, the challenges and the adversity. You